to see everybody here in Richmond, Virginia. Welcome from the great state of New York City and New York State. Thank you very much. I want to start with a fun year, 1776. And I'm not going where you think I'm going. I'm not going anything about the founding. 1776 is an important year for a couple of reasons. Edward Gibbon, anybody know who he is? Edward Gibbon published the first volume of his life work, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. And to describe the collapse of that city-state, which by then had grown to a global empire, an empire so vast it spans now dozens upon dozens of countries, it took him 6 volumes, 1.5 million words, to describe how a nation-state so large collapsed into utter chaos. Well, the not-so-great historian Joe Borelli can place the blame for the decline and fall of the city and state of New York, the Empire State as it was once known, in just 10 words. The woke progressiveness of Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo. By the way, de Blasio's 2 words in case you were counting. It is, I had to look it up. The irony, the thesis of Gibbon's 1.5 million words was that the fall of Rome happened as a result of the decay in the character of those who formed its liberal and political elite. So again, I give you the disaster that is Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo. Their leadership and that of the Democrats in our state legislature and city council have taken the Empire State and turned it into the Vampire State. They've taken what was once the financial backbone of the American industrial might and turned it into the city and state whose largest export right now is people trying to get out. As a Republican in New York City, I assure you I do not lose one single vote. There has never in the history of Staten Island, New York, where I'm from, been a single person who one day voted for Joe Borelli and the next day decided to vote for Bill de Blasio. I lose votes, as it turns out, to people who want to go vote for Ron DeSantis, or want to go vote for Brian Kemp in Georgia, want to go vote in South Carolina for Henry McMaster, people who want to get the heck out of New York and vote for people who they might not always agree with, but at least have a rational design of a state. Heck, I mean, in New York, I even lose people to the high-tax state of New Jersey because people in New Jersey seem to have a bit more solid grounding on what constitutes a merit-based education for their kids in their school. And they happen to actually like the town police department where they live. New York has a war on both of those things. The character of our leaders, our Democrats, they have opened up our jails. Our Democrats placed the priority on the inmates over our correction officers. Our Democrats have let our jails fall into such disrepair that the only solution they ever seem to propose, and even implement, is to let as many incarcerated inmates out and back on the streets. Our Democrats gave us bail reform. Now, if you watch the news lately, you know this has actually made national news how bad it has been. Our reforms now prevent judges, people who we elect or appoint to make rational decisions based on a defendant's likelihood of committing a crime. Our reforms prevent judges from making those decisions and putting gangbangers, drug dealers, bank robbers, and if you actually read the New York Post last week, you would know that New York State actually let out an axe murderer, not someone who sold marijuana on the corner, an axe murderer back on the streets. So as predictable as, I don't know, Halley's Comet, everyone saw coming this rise in crime. Because in addition to bail reform, we also have revitalized our hatred of the police department. We've ended qualified immunity for our police officers, placing civil liability on them in harm's way. We scrapped our anti-crime teams. That's what we call them in New York. You might call them something else. These are undercover officers who literally have wrestled thousands of illegal guns out of the hands from thugs who would use illegal guns to shoot other people on the street. Those people, in most towns in America, you'd buy those people a beer. Great men and women. In New York City, we actually scrapped them, abandoned them. They defunded the police, they cut the budget, they lowered the head count, they scrapped police academy classes, they criminalized police officers. In New York City, you can be arrested with a misdemeanor if you're a police officer if you compress someone's diaphragm on the front or back. I will take any 2 of you, the biggest guys in the room, and try to put me in cuffs without compressing my back or chest. It's impossible. Now, if deliberately destroying our jails meant we can let out all the inmates, and deliberately disarming our police department means we can have less arrests, it almost takes a Kafka or an Orwell or Aldous Huxley to come up with the spin that Bill de Blasio boasts about. He actually boasts we have the lowest jail population since World War II. Do we have the lowest crime rate since World War II? No, not even close. But we have the lowest jail population since World War II. In fact, if we had the lowest crime rate since World War II, I'd buy Bill de Blasio a beer. So they don't arrest people, they don't keep people in jail, and they try to convince us that we are safer as a result. You actually have to appreciate the complexity of how the progressive mind arrives at the conclusion. So if Edward Gibbon blamed the fall of Rome on the moral decay of Rome's elite, he called it the decadence of Rome's elite, then history has certainly repeated itself with the coming of Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo, and now even our new governor, Kathy Hochul. But really, Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo are like the Michael Jordan and Larry Bird of screwing shit up. And it's not just policing, it's our schools. And our problems go deeper than critical race theory or whatnot, things that are making the news nationally. We've seen the systemic degradation of our public education system by design. We've eliminated student merit. We've eliminated teacher accountability. In New York, we've actually started eliminating a program we called Gifted and Talented. In your town, in your city, you might call it an honors program or something like that. We're eliminating a program, now get this, that has taken millions of young people, millions, something we actually did a good job in, millions of young people, rich or poor, black, white, and everything in between, and given them the best education we could possibly give them. We tried our best with these kids, and ideally, so many of them have gone on to greatness, lifted their families out of poverty. But we're not doing that anymore. We ended it, and why did we end it? In the name of woke equity and social justice. Our Democrats are doing all they can to erode our elite high schools. We have hundreds of high schools in New York City. A few of them are very elite and hard to get into. Schools like Stuyvesant High School and Brooklyn Tech once were emulated by cities across the country as how we can educate urban youth. Now, they're being prevented, and they're changing the admissions criteria, and they're dumbing them down. Why? And I kid you not, they're changing the admissions criteria because there are too many Asians. Does that sound crazy to you? I kid you not. The demographic breakdown of the schools does not please our noble progressive leaders because too many Asian students pass the entrance exam. This is actually the reason. This is not something that is talked about behind closed doors. This is openly talked about. This despite Asian immigrants being the poorest demographic block in our city. Shame on them, and shame on them for treating our kids as boxes that need to be checked. Now, why am I talking about all this? Because what happens in New York gets replicated by progressives in your town. It used to be a good thing. Your town might have modeled its police department or its infrastructure plan on what things were being done or how things are being done in New York City. We call those the good old days, back when we had, and I'll say it, reasonable Democrats and good Republican leaders. New York used to be a model. Now we export progressive government by hashtag. Hashtag defund the police. Hashtag close Rikers. I ask my colleagues, why are we doing these things? And their response is, well, aren't you getting all the people on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram? Aren't people mad? So we have government by hashtag. If you got a catchy hashtag and you can get it in your legislator's face, they might try to make policy based on it. So what's next coming down the pike for New York and potentially for you guys? Congestion pricing, the policy manifestation of hashtag ban cars. So now if you come to New York City and you want to go visit Manhattan, it might cost you $25 extra on top of the tolls you have to pay to cross the bridges to enter the elite portion of Manhattan, to eliminate congestion there, in the center of business where the wealthy people are. Now, is there congestion outside of downtown Manhattan? Sure there is. But those are the people who have to pay. The people in the outer boroughs, the middle class, the factory workers, the janitors, the firefighters, they all live in the outer boroughs, have to pay the congestion price to alleviate congestion for the central business district and high market real estate neighborhoods of Manhattan. How is that fair? Hashtag housing justice. We're on the precipice of banning single-family homes. It's being talked about in New York. It's being talked about in other cities. It's actually based on the idea that it is amoral for you to own a single-family house on your own property in a suburban neighborhood. It's actually so immoral that we're going to ban it. Climate justice, the idea that you have to put solar panels on your roof. The idea that we're going to ban new natural gas hookups to your house. The idea we're going to ban natural gas infrastructure, despite the fact that natural gas actually made New York City cleaner under Michael Bloomberg's term in 12 years than it had ever been before. Natural gas did that. But again, hashtag climate justice, no natural gas. Voting justice. New York City is now on the brink of being one of the first major municipalities in the country to allow non-citizens to vote. And I'm not even talking about just undocumented immigrants who come here illegally. I'm talking about people who reside here 30 days. 30 days. You can reside in New York City if this law gets passed for 30 days. Have a work visa. Be here from France working for your company for 2 or 3 months. Vote in municipal elections. Vote to change New York City. Vote to issue more debt. Vote to change our taxes. And then go back to wherever you happen to come from. You don't get to go to Paris, chomp on a baguette, and vote in the municipal elections there. So please keep abreast of what's happening in New York City, because it is always upstream from what's happening in your neck of the woods. And I know Secretary Zinke mentioned this before, but getting involved in local elections does matter. If you look at New York City, you'll know the name I'm going to mention, AOC. I was talking backstage with somebody. AOC is not institutionally powerful in Congress. Bills under AOC's name don't routinely get passed by the Democratic majority. In fact, she's sometimes sidelined. But she's influential in New York City by getting Democratic socialists elected to city and state offices. She's reforming the city and state legislatures with Democratic socialists who actually can form a bloc that's large enough to influence policy. So yeah, I mean, you should all be getting involved and watching what's happening in New York City, realizing that this is what could happen next in your town, and take the steps to form your own blocs of rational people in whatever city and state you live in, whatever county government you have, and start considering running for county commissioners, school boards, city councils. Because all these things matter, and when you think about what levels of government actually affect the things you do every single day, you'll find that AOC doesn't really have that much impact on your life, but County Commissioner X and Mayor Y are actually doing the things that you care about. So thank you guys so much for having me. I'll take a question, yeah.
Joe, I heard something, I think this is a story that was on Fox News about potential for illegals coming to New York State that are going to be appropriated a certain amount of money to end up domiciling there. I'm not sure whether it was about their future education, welfare, or where are we with that? Did that actually end up occurring?
No, but I mean, if someone's here and they're an undocumented person, they would get equal treatment from us in terms of social welfare programs, whatever they are. But I don't know of any specific fund for that outside of the nonprofit sector, and there might be people, yeah. A lot of people will propose things to kind of appease their base, and that's, you know, look, I do that too, right? I'm not unwilling to judge myself, who sometimes tries to get a good headline. But yeah, I mean, it could be something like that, but I haven't heard it actually happening. Any more questions? Not even one hard one? Thank you, guys. God bless, and enjoy the rest of the day.